The car Sony almost scrapped is the one that saved Ghostbusters Afterlife. Not a replica, not a new build, the actual 1959 Cadillac from Ghostbusters II, the one with the marquee boards, the one that rolled through Times Square in 1989, the one that spent years in a shipping container on the Sony lot with a smashed windshield and weeds growing through the wheel wells, while the studio said nothing and 12,000 people signed a petition that nobody answered. You know the Ecto-1 story. The restoration, the press reveal, Aykroyd behind the wheel, the car gleaming white again, the YouTube videos Sony put out with the triumphant music. That story got told everywhere. This is the one that didn't. Because there were never just two cars. It took three separate 1959 Cadillacs to make the original two Ghostbusters films. One became a legend. One died on the Brooklyn Bridge mid-shoot and got towed away with a traffic fine attached. And one ended up in a container on a studio lot, stripped to its frame, one budget meeting away from the scrapyard. That last car is the one you watched in Afterlife, and the only reason it survived is stranger than anything in the films. To understand why either of these cars matters, you have to understand what a 1959 Miller Meteor Futura duplex actually is. Not what it looks like, but what it is, and why finding one in working condition in 1983 was not a simple thing. Miller Meteor built professional cars, hearses, ambulances, and the combination units that small towns used because they could only afford one vehicle and it had to do both jobs. They built their bodies on Cadillac commercial chassis. Cadillac supplied the engine and running gear, Miller Meteor finished everything else. The Futura Duplex was their flagship combination unit. Long wheelbase, curved rear windows unlike anything else on the road, tail fins sourced from the 1959 Cadillac Eldorado, the largest production fins ever mounted on an American automobile. The car stretched just over 20 feet bumper to bumper, weighed north of 7,000 pounds, and ran a 6.3-liter V8 making around 320 horsepower, which sounds adequate until you consider what it was being asked to move. How many were built is a question without a clean answer. Estimates in the collector community range from around 400 down to as few as 25. What everyone agrees on is that they were never common, that most of them spent decades in hard service, and that by the early 1980s, the ones that hadn't been scrapped were mostly exhausted. They had been ambulances and hearses. They had done the job. Finding one in drivable condition at a price a film production would accept was not straightforward. The production team for Ghostbusters understood this. They weren't looking for a pristine show car. They were looking for something that could be transformed, something that looked exactly like what Ray Stantz would find for $4,800. The challenge was finding any example at all. The car they found was at a specialty dealer in West Hollywood called Cadillac Corner, operated by a man named Frank Corrente. A hospital in Riverside had owned a 1959 Miller Meteor Futura, a gold example, still in driving condition, which by 1983 standards for a 24-year-old professional car made it something close to remarkable. The hospital sold it to Corrente. He drove it from Riverside to West Hollywood and put it on his lot. The reason he was willing to let it go when Columbia's people came looking had less to do with the money than with the fact that his employees had discovered the siren still worked and had developed a habit of driving the car around Hollywood with it running. The noise complaints had been accumulating. A retirement home nearby had been particularly vocal. Corrente sold the car partly to get it off his hands. Hardware consultant Stephen Dane, who would design not only the Ecto-1, but the proton packs, the ghost traps, and the PKE meters, and who would be credited only as hardware consultant in the finished film, took delivery in October 1983 and began the work. The car was painted white. The tail fin assembly was refined. An equipment rack for the roof was fabricated from the original ambulance gurney still in the rear compartment. Avionics gauges were modified into ghost detection instruments. The No Ghost logo went on the doors. By the time Dane finished, the car that had been a gold Riverside County ambulance was the Ecto-1. For the original film, it was the only fully converted car. The black primered wreck that Ray drives to the firehouse, the before vehicle, was leased for a single day of shooting and returned. The studio bought it back later, but for the 1984 film, one car was carrying everything. All the driving sequences, all the location work in New York, the studio exteriors in Los Angeles, one 20-foot, 7,000-pound Cadillac. And when it broke down between takes, which it did often, the crew fixed it and kept going. That car, and what happened to it 5 years later, is the prologue to the story of the one that almost didn't make it. Ghostbusters II began production in 1989. The original Ecto-1, 5 years old in production terms, heavily used, rebuilt more than once during the original shoot, went back to work. It didn't last. The car had always been difficult to keep running. Stunt drivers described it as unwieldy. The air suspension made the ride smooth, but the handling unpredictable at speed. The V8, adequate at the car's stock weight, was being asked to move something now carrying additional roof hardware, interior modifications, and the full prop build on top of 7,000 base pounds. Dan Aykroyd would later describe it plainly. The thing was a piece of junk. They could barely keep it running between takes. Partway through production, it died on the Brooklyn Bridge. Not quietly, not in a way that let the crew swap vehicles without the city noticing. It stopped in the middle of a scene, on one of the most visible stretches of infrastructure in New York, and wouldn't start again. Traffic backed up. The production received fines. The car was towed. A third 1959 Miller Meteor was found and purchased. This one was rebuilt as the Ecto-1A, the in-universe explanation being that the Ghostbusters had upgraded their car after years away from active service. The A in the name was a production acknowledgement of the replacement, dressed up as story logic. The new car had more roof equipment, digital LED marquee boards on each side that could scroll text, an updated logo on the hood and doors, yellow and black striping along the lower body. It was a more elaborate build than the original, partly because the production had more money the second time, and partly because a sequel announces itself. The Ecto-1A finished Ghostbusters II. The hero car was set aside, its active production life over. Both vehicles passed into Sony Pictures custody. And then, for a long time, not much happened to either of them, which is itself a kind of decision. The Ecto-1A's post-production life began in theme parks. Universal Studios Florida ran a stage attraction called the Ghostbusters Spooktacular, and the Ecto-1A became part of it. A display piece, a photo opportunity, a tangible piece of the franchise for visitors who had grown up with the films. In concept, this sounds like preservation. In practice, it is one of the more reliable ways to destroy an automobile. Outdoor display in a Florida climate, heat, humidity, ultraviolet exposure, and the physical contact of crowds is not kind to metal and rubber. The Ecto-1A was maintained as a prop, not a museum piece. There is a difference. Museum conservation means controlled environment, limited handling, active intervention against deterioration. Prop maintenance means keeping something functional enough to do its job. Once it stops doing that job, the maintenance stops too. By the time the Spooktacular ran its course and the car came back to Sony, it was carrying new damage on top of old damage. The bodywork had suffered. The roof equipment had degraded. The marquee boards, an engineering achievement in 1989, were no longer operational. The car moved around the backlot over the following years without a clear destination. The details of its exact movements through the late 1990s and early 2000s are not thoroughly documented. That absence of documentation is itself an answer about how much institutional attention was being paid. What the car needed by the mid-2000s was a full restoration. What it got was the beginning of one. In 2007, Sony initiated a restoration project for both cars, the original Hero Ecto-1 and the Ecto-1A, under the direction of a Sony executive named Keith Hargrove. Both vehicles were sent to Cinema Vehicle Services in North Hollywood, one of the most experienced picture vehicle restoration operations in the industry. The scope was both cars returned to screen-used condition for display and promotional use. With the video game in development and conversations about a third film circulating, the timing made sense. Cinema Vehicle Services started with the original Ecto-1. The 1984 Hero car needed new belts, hoses, carburetor work, full rewiring, and rust treatment across nearly every body panel. The roof equipment had to be cataloged, repaired, and in some cases reconstructed from reference photographs. Parts of Dane's original 1983 fabrication had to be reverse-engineered to match. It was a thorough job, and it cost what thorough jobs cost. The Ecto-1A was disassembled, stripped to its frame, components laid out for assessment, made ready for the same process. Then the budget ran out. What had been allocated to restore 2 vehicles had been spent on 1. The Ecto-1A, now in pieces, was transported back to Sony. The shell went into a shipping container on the lot. The restored Hero Ecto-1 was unveiled with a press event, Aykroyd behind the wheel, the car gleaming white, the official YouTube video capturing the moment cleanly. Positive coverage, millions of views. The car was positioned in front of Sony's Ghost Corp building, where it became the physical face of the franchise's legacy. No one made a video about the car in the container. 6 years after the restoration was abandoned, photographs appeared on fan forums. They had been taken at Sony's prop warehouse by a visitor with a camera. They showed the Ecto-1A in the open, windshield smashed, hood crumpled, the original light bar bent on the hood. The marquee boards were still mounted on the sides. The Ghostbusters logo was still on the doors. The car was recognizable, which somehow made the condition worse. Recognizable meant it hadn't been stripped for parts or processed out of existence. It had simply been left. The images spread. Fan forums, car blogs, entertainment sites picked them up. Autoblog ran them. The framing was consistent. Sony, the studio that owned one of the most culturally significant automobiles in cinema history, was letting it rot on its own backlot. GB fans, the largest organized Ghostbusters community, with over 21,000 registered members, launched a formal campaign. They built a dedicated website, collected signatures on a petition with a specific ask: sell us the car at scrap value and let us restore it ourselves. The petition explained the history, described what had already been lost, and outlined a restoration plan that included a national tour and eventual museum display. It was patient in tone and explicit about the stakes. The page noted directly that without intervention, the car was more likely to be sent to a scrapyard than preserved or sold. That was not rhetoric. It was an honest assessment of Sony's likely decision-making, and the community knew it. 12,094 people signed. Sony did not respond publicly. No statement, no acknowledgement of the petition, no change in the car's status. The signatures accumulated, and nothing moved. There is a particular kind of institutional silence that is not malicious, not indifferent, and somehow worse than either. Sony had not decided to destroy the car. Sony had also not decided to save it. The car existed in administrative limbo, owned but unmanaged, preserved in the technical sense that it hadn't been crushed yet, deteriorating in every other sense. 12,000 people asked a question. The institution processed no answer. The car stayed in storage. The years continued. In 2019, Ghostbusters Afterlife moved into pre-production. Jason Reitman was directing. Francois Adoy came on as production designer. They needed Ecto-1s. The in-film Ecto-1 for Afterlife had to tell a specific story. A car that had been sitting in a barn for 30 years, found by Egon Spengler's grandchildren, coaxed back to running condition by a teenager who doesn't fully understand what he's sitting in. The visual language required was particular, authentic decay. Rust that looked real because the distribution of it matched how metal actually deteriorates, not how prop departments fake it. Every production applying artificial weathering is working against the viewer's subconscious sense of what genuine age looks like. The most authentic source of genuine age was in a shipping container on the Sony lot. Adoy confirmed in a 2021 interview what happened next. The production team pulled the Ecto-1A out of storage. They also acquired a second 1959 Cadillac. Then they took both cars completely apart, every component cataloged, every piece of surviving original hardware photographed and documented. The process, as Adoy described it, was forensic, the kind of systematic inventory you'd conduct if you were trying to understand not just what a car looked like, but what it had been through. From that documentation, Ghost Light Industries in Los Angeles built two identical, fully operational Hero Ecto-1s, inside and out. An interior buck that could separate into 4 sections for stage photography was also constructed. The production had 3 months from disassembly to delivery in Calgary. The weathering applied to those finished cars, every rust spot, every strip of peeling paint, every sign of a vehicle abandoned and reluctantly returned to service was intentional, chosen, an art department decision about where time should leave its marks. The production started with rebuilt surfaces and worked backward into decay. The car that had experienced actual neglect, actual abandonment, actual years in a container without maintenance or care was the source material for a story about a car that had experienced those same things. That irony is so complete it almost reads as designed. It wasn't. It was just what happened. Ghostbusters Afterlife was released in November 2021. The Ecto-1A, or what the production had made from it and around it, appeared on screen in front of audiences that included almost certainly some of the 12,000 people who had signed the petition 8 years earlier and heard nothing back. For Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, released in 2024, the production moved to New York. The Ecto-1A was used for those location scenes, actual streets, actual traffic, actual Manhattan. In 1989, the car had moved through Times Square with its marquee boards running. In 2024, it was back, 35 years later, having traveled from active production vehicle to theme park prop to abandoned shell to forensic reference material to working car on a live city street. There is no clean word for what that arc is. It is not exactly a rescue. Nobody intervened with intention and a plan. The car was preserved by proximity, by being on the right lot, owned by the right studio, at the moment a production designer needed something real and opened a door. The petition mattered, probably, in the way that public pressure on institutions usually matters, not by producing a direct response, but by making the cost of indifference visible enough that the path of least resistance eventually shifted. Whether it influenced any specific decision at Sony is not confirmed on record. What the timeline shows is that the car's public deterioration generated coverage that put the studio in a bad light, and the car's eventual use rehabilitated that narrative without anyone having to say so. That is not cynical, it is just how these things tend to go. The original Hero Ecto-1 sits in front of Sony's Ghost Corp building. Observers who have photographed it in recent years note it has been showing signs of weathering again. The sun keeps working. The current status of the Ecto-1A between productions is not publicly confirmed. Sony has made no announcement about permanent preservation. The car is owned, has been used recently, and beyond that, the documentation goes quiet. What is confirmed is what it survived: 2 productions, a theme park, years of display damage, a budget cut that left it in pieces, 6 years in a container, and the quiet institutional arithmetic of a corporation that owns too many things to care carefully about all of them. The petition that tried to change that math gathered 12,094 signatures and received no public answer. The car is still here anyway. That sentence could be a small victory. It could also be a description of how close the other outcome came to being the one that happened. Both are true. One is just easier to say.